good Vach Shavua Tov and Hag Purim Sameach, Freilich and Purim. We're out of Shabbos. We're into the new week, so we wish each other good Vach Shavua Tov, a good week. And it's Purim, the joyous celebratory holiday of Purim. So we can say Hag Purim Sameach or a Freilich and Purim. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? And if you're on the East Coast, wow, because I know it's late. Paul in the Great Northwest, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Bella in Florida, Joe in the Inland Empire, Belle in Texas, Sharon in New Jersey, burning that past midnight oil. Wow. And over there on YouTube side, Aoife in Florida, Ilanit in Silver Spring, Ella says shalom, Aoife says I may fall asleep. Understood. We're going to keep it moving, and it is actually a relatively short daf. Reminder, tomorrow at noon Pacific, we'll do our annual reading of the book of Esther in English, right? So it doesn't fulfill your requirement to hear the Megillah, which is the book of Esther in Hebrew, but it's the next best thing. So we'll be doing that at noon Pacific. We'll have, you can make everything that is collected in donations to Accidental Talmudist during this day of Purim, tonight and tomorrow, through donate.accidentaltalmudist.org will pass through us and we'll give it to the poor and needy. And that is a way to fulfill the obligation to give gifts to the poor on Purim. And then we'll do AT Daily, our page of the Daf, our Talmud page. Tomorrow we'll do that special time, 2 p.m., right? 2 p.m. Pacific, AT Daily, noon for our reading of the book of Esther tomorrow, Sunday. Okay, our daf tonight is Chaf Daled, page 24, here in Tractate Bava Metzia, the 22nd volume of the Talmud. And tonight we'll finish, God willing, our discussion of MIshna number 1 here in chapter 2. We were discussing this Baraisa, which continues, and likewise Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would say, in the case of one who rescues a lost item from a lion or from a bear or from a cheetah. That's bardellas, which some translate as a polecat and some translate as a cheetah. Or from the tide of the sea, or from the flooding of a river, and in the case of one who finds a lost item in a main thoroughfare, or a large plaza, or in any place where the multitudes are found, these items belong to him due to the fact that the owner despairs of ever recovering that item, right? It falls out of your boat in the ocean, it gets swept away by a flooding river, a cheetah grabs your bag and runs off with it. So the owner typically despairs of ever recovering that. That renders the item ownerless. And so if you find it, you can keep it, right? That is the law of these kinds of objects in these situations, not objects rather, but rather these situations where objects are lost. If you then find it from that, you can keep it, according to Shimon ben Elazar, in this Baraisa. Now, the rest of today, we're going to spend discussing whether this is the law or not. A dilemma was raised before the sages when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that if one finds a lost item in any place where multitudes are found, right? So they all agree that if the river or a cheetah does away with your handbag, the owner despairs of recovering it, and so it's rendered ownerless, and a finder later can keep it. But what about one who drops an item in the street in Manhattan, right, where multitudes are passing by? Is it so that we automatically despair of recovering the lost object when it's dropped in such a crowded place, right? So dilemma was raised before the sages when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that if one finds a lost item in any place where multitudes are found, that the item belongs to the finder. Did he refer only to a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, but in a place where there is a majority of Jews, the owner does not despair of recovering the item because he relies on the Jews to return his item? Now, they're not saying that, Jews are more likely to return lost objects because they're better people and Gentiles are less likely. It's simply that Jews are obligated by the Torah to return lost objects, and Gentiles are not bound by the same halacha. They're not bound by Jewish law. And so that's why if you're in a place where the multitudes are Jews, okay, well then some Jew is going to pick it up and proclaim, I found this thing, and try to find the owner. Gentiles don't have that obligation. So when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said that if you drop a lost object in a place where multitudes are passing, then the finder can keep it, is he saying that that is only applies to a place where the majority of the people are Gentiles, or does it also apply? Does he rule the same way in a place where the majority of the people passing by are Jews? And it doesn't matter that they're obligated to return the lost objects, that so many people are passing by. It could get trampled. There's going to be no expectation of getting your lost object back. And so the owner despairs of recovering it even there. That's the question being asked. Or perhaps even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, he would also say that the item belongs to the finder. And if you say that even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, he also said that the item belongs to the one who found it, do the rabbis disagree with him, or do they not disagree? Did the majority hold like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in this baraisa or not? Did his ruling become the law or not? And if you say that the rabbis disagree with him, so his view is minority opinion, in a place where there is a majority of Jews, they certainly disagree. In a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, do the rabbis disagree or do they not disagree? Meaning he was overruled where the majority of the people are Jews. The owner would expect that somehow some Jew would pick it up because the majority of the people there are Jews. He would proclaim the find and he might have a chance of getting it back. So the rabbis would disagree if one lost the item in a place where the majority of the people are Jews. But did they also disagree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in a place where the majority are Gentiles? These are all the questions being asked, and one more. And two more. And if you say that the rabbis disagree with him, even in a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, is the law in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, or is the law not in accordance with his opinion? Sometimes a minority view becomes the law. Did his view become the law or not? And if you say that the halacha, that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, does this halacha apply specifically in a place where there is a majority of Gentiles? Or is the halacha in accordance with his opinion even in a place where there is a majority of Jews? How exactly did he rule? Was his ruling accepted? Was his ruling extended even to a place where the majority of the people are Jews, that the owner would despair of recovering the lost item when it was dropped where multitudes pass? Or does that only apply where it's a majority of Gentiles who are not obligated to return the object by Jewish law? What is the ruling? So the Gemara suggests, come and hear a proof from another baraisa. In the case of one who finds coins in synagogues and study halls, or in any place where the multitudes are found, these coins belong to him due to the fact that the owner despairs of their recovery. So that would seem to indicate that wherever multitudes pass, if you drop coins or if you drop any lost object, the owner despairs of recovering it. So finders keepers. So that would seem to indicate even in a place where it's a majority of Jews, because synagogues and study halls are exclusively frequented by Jews. So who is the one about whom you heard that he follows the multitudes, i.e. that he attaches significance to the loss of an item in a place where the multitudes are present? It is Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So conclude from this baraisa that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that a lost item belongs to the finder even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, as synagogues and study halls are places frequented exclusively by Jews. But the Gemara rejects the proof. With what are we dealing here? We are dealing with a case when the coins are scattered and there is no distinguishing mark on them. Irrespective of multitudes being there, if there's no distinguishing mark on the coins, how could the owner expect to get the coins returned to him? And all the more so where multitudes pass, no matter what their identity is. So the Gemara asks, if it is a case where the coins are scattered, why did the Baraisa establish the case specifically in a place where the multitudes are found? Even in a place where the multitudes are not found, the coins belong to the finder. So rather, actually, the Baraisa is referring to a case where the coins are bound, so there's in some kind of a coin purse. And with what are we dealing here? This is a case where the coins were found in the houses of assembly, bevate kenesiot, of Gentiles, houses of assembly of Gentiles, not in synagogues. Now that resolves the matter of synagogues, but with regard to study halls, which remain exclusive to Jews, then what can be said? And the Gemara answers the Bryce is referring to our study halls, in which Gentile guards or custodians are sitting. So since they don't have an obligation to return, the person who lost it might despair of recovering it. Now the Gemara notes, now that you have arrived at this explanation, the bate kenesiot in the Baraisa can be explained as referring to our synagogues in which Gentiles are sitting. Now come in here a proof from a MIshna in a case when one found a lost item in a city where both Jews and Gentiles reside. If the city has a majority of Jews, he is obligated to proclaim what he found. If there is a majority of Gentiles, he is not obligated to proclaim what he found. Now, who is the one about whom you heard that he follows the multitudes, meaning that he attaches significance to the loss of an item in a place where the multitudes are present? It is Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So resolved from this MIshna that when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that the item belongs to the finder, it is referring specifically to a place where there is a majority of Gentiles who are not obligated by Jewish law to return the object, but in a place where there is a majority of Jews, no, it does not belong to the finder and needs to proclaim what he found. The Gemara rejects this proof. In accordance with whose opinion is this MIshna? It is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, meaning the majority. So the Gemara suggests, in any case, resolve the dilemma from the MIshna that the rabbis concede to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in a place where there is a majority of Gentiles. If a Jew loses his lost item there, he despairs of recovering it. So if a Jew finds it within a place where the majority of the people are Gentiles, he can assume that whoever lost it, they're despaired of recovering it, so it's finders keepers. But the Gemara rejects this proof as well, in accordance with whose... the Gemara rejects this whole explanation. Rather, actually, the MIshna is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and he stated his opinion even in a place where there is a majority of Jews, even where it's a majority of Jews, if somebody lost an object where there are multitudes, finders keepers. And with what are we dealing here? This is a case where the found item is concealed. And the Gemara asks, if the item is concealed, what is the reason the item is with the finder? Clearly it was placed there, and the owner will return to retrieve it. That's why he concealed it. And didn't we learn in a MIshna, in a case where one found a vessel in a garbage dump, if the vessel is concealed, he may not touch it. But if it is exposed, then the finder takes the item and proclaims his find. If somebody went to the trouble of concealing it, they didn't lose it. They stashed it. The Gemara answers, it can be explained, as Rav Papa says elsewhere, that it is referring to a garbage dump that is not designed to be cleared, and the owner of the land reconsidered and decided to clear it. So if one finds concealed vessels there, he should proclaim his find, because otherwise the vessels will be cleared with the rest of the garbage dump. Here too, the MIshna is referring to a garbage dump that is not designed to be cleared, and the owner of the land reconsidered and decided to clear it. And two, if one finds concealed items, his course of action is determined by the identity of the majority of the residents of the city. If they are Jews, he must proclaim his find, and if not, he need not proclaim his find. No proof can be cited to resolve our dilemma from the special case of a garbage dump that is going to be, reformatted as not a garbage dump. And so somebody might have stashed stuff in the garbage dump intending to come back later and get it. Now that this whole area is being cleared, if you find concealed stuff, you might proclaim the find to help this person out who thought he was stashing it in a safe place. Now we're on 24b. And if you wish, say instead that actually the MIshna is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, who seem to disagree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Is it taught in the MIshna that the items are his? It is taught that he is not obligated to proclaim his find. He may not keep them, but he shall place the items in his possession until a Jew will come and provide a distinguishing mark to describe the items and take them. Come and hear a proof from that which Rav Asi says. If one found a barrel of wine In a city whose population has a majority of Gentiles, keeping the barrel is permitted in terms of the laws of finding lost items because it presumably belonged to a Gentile, and deriving benefit from the wine is prohibited, as it is presumed to be the wine of a Gentile. You can't keep the wine of a Gentile. It's not kosher, first of all, but second, because especially when these laws were drafted in ancient times, and the majority, or if not all, Gentiles were idolaters, right, who practiced idolatry, and it was very likely that their wine was used as a libation in a ritual involving idolatry. So if a Jew came and provided a distinguishing mark to describe this jug of wine, then drinking the wine is permitted for its finder, as it proved to be the wine of a Jew. Nevertheless, it belongs to the finder because the owner would have despaired of recovering a barrel misplaced in a public area where the majority of the people who frequent that area are not obligated in the law of returning lost objects because they're Gentiles. The Gemara explains the proof in accordance with whose opinion is this statement of Rav Asi. It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that if you drop something where the multitudes frequent, finders keepers. Conclude from it that when Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar stated his opinion, it was only with regard to a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, but in a place where there is a majority of Jews, the owner does not despair of recovering his lost item. Now the Gemara rejects this proof. Actually, I will say to you that even with regard to a place where there is a majority of Jews, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar also stated his opinion. And Rav Asi holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, in one case, that of a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, and disagrees with him in one case, that of a place where there is a majority of Jews. Right? So according to this view of what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, if there are multitudes there, the owner despairs of recovering it, no matter who the multitudes are. Others interpret what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said as applying to a place where the majority are Gentiles, but not where the majority are Jews. Others say, no, Shimon ben Elazar said it always applies where there are multitudes. Other sages only agree with him where the majority are Gentiles, but not where the majority are Jews. And the Gemara clarifies, and once it was established that deriving benefit from the wine is prohibited, then with regard to the fact that it is permitted in terms of the laws of finding lost items, for what matter is that law relevant? You can't drink wine that might have belonged to a Gentile. And Rav Ashi said it is relevant with regard to deriving benefit from its container. That is permitted. You could wash out the container and use it. The Gemara relates there was a certain man who found 4 dinars that were bound in a cloth and cast into the Biran River. And he came to Rav Yehuda and asked how to proceed. And Rav Yehuda said, go proclaim your finding. Right? You can't keep it. Proclaim that you found it and see if the owner will come and find it. The Gemara asks, but isn't it a case of an item lost in the tide of the sea that should therefore belong to the finder? And the Gemara answers, the Biran River is different. Since it contains obstacles, the owner does not despair of recovering the lost item. And the Gemara asks, but isn't it a place where the majority of the population is Gentiles? Conclude from it that the law is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, even in a place where there is a majority of Gentiles. And the Gemara answers, the Biran River is different, as Jews dammed it and Jews dredge it, right? So things don't get swept away in the water. They get caught up in these obstacles, the dam or the dredging that goes on in that river. Since Jews created a dam there, say that the coins fell from a Jew, and since Jews dredge it, the owner of the coins does not despair of recovering them. Now, let me just read where the halacha came out in this discussion. The discussion continues a little longer, but it will be a short class tonight. So the halacha is, in a case where one found a lost item in an area with a Gentile majority, even if a Jew described it by providing a distinguishing mark, the finder is not obligated to return the item. Nevertheless, it is proper to go beyond the letter of the law and to return the item. And the Rima adds that if the finder is poor and the owner is wealthy, there is no obligation to return the item, even if he seeks to go beyond the letter of the law. So somebody made that comment a couple days ago that, okay, if something is dropped or swept away by a river or dropped among where masses of people are walking, and any reasonable person would despair of recovering the object, and therefore it was rendered ownerless, and therefore a finder can keep it, if nevertheless you can identify who the owner is, then of course it is praiseworthy to return the object. Of course it is praiseworthy and the right thing to do. It's just not always possible, and so you don't have to go through the trouble of going to extreme lengths to find the owner of the lost object. Now the Gemara relates, Rav Yehuda was moving along behind Mar Shmuel in the market where pounded grain was sold, and Rav Yehuda said to Shmuel, so they're having a conversation, but it says Rav Yehuda is walking behind Mar Shmuel. Why is Rav Yehuda walking behind Mar Shmuel? Because Mar Shmuel is his teacher, and he's walking behind him respectfully, but presumably when they're talking, he can, walk up next to him. So Rav Yehuda asks Mar Shmuel, if one found a purse known as an arnake here in this market where pounded grain is sold, right, a big market, then what is the law? So Shmuel said to him, the law is, as the Mishnah states, these belong to him. Dropped in a place where multitudes are passing belongs to the finder. Rav Yehuda asked him, well, if a Jew came and provided a distinguishing mark to describe it, then what is the law? And Shmuel said to him, the finder is obligated to return it. Rav Yehuda asked, well, these are two contradictory rulings. And Shmuel said to him, by law, it belongs to the finder. When I said the finder is obligated to return it if he learns the identity of the owner, that was going beyond the letter of the law. And this is like that incident where Shmuel's father found these donkeys in the desert and returned them to their owner after the passage of 12 months of the year because he acted beyond the letter of the law. And of course, that is praiseworthy. And the Gemara relates, Rava was moving along behind Rav Nachman in the tanner's market. Same idea. They're walking through a market, and some say in the marketplace frequented by the sages. And Rava said to Rav Nachman, if one found a purse of money, here, what is the law? Rav Nachman said to him that the law is as the Mishnah states, these belong to him, the finder. Rava asked him, if a Jew came and provided a distinguishing mark to describe it, what is the law? Rav Nachman said to him that in this case as well, the law is as the Mishnah states, these belong to the finder. And Rava asked, but isn't the owner justifiably standing and screaming that the purse belongs to him? And Rav Nachman said to him, he becomes as one who screams to no avail about his house that collapsed or about his ship that sank into the sea. Right? So Rav Nachman says, listen, a person can go and act beyond the letter of the law if he wants to, but another cannot demand of him that he act beyond the letter of the law. And the law is, because you need some kind of, general consistent policy, that when people drop stuff in a place where there can be no expectation of getting it back, finders keepers. So the Gemara relates, there was a certain kite that took meat in the marketplace. A kite is a bird of prey, a raptor. That grabbed a piece of meat with its talons in the marketplace and then cast it among the palm trees of the house of Bar Marion. And one who found the meat came before Abaye to ask how to proceed. And Abaye said to him, you can keep it for yourself. So the Gemara asked, but isn't the marketplace of kosher meat a place where there is a majority of Jews? So conclude from it that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, even in a place where there is a majority of Jews. And the Gemara answers, this is a different situation. This kite, right, this raptor, this bird, is different. As an item taken by a, let's call it a hawk. Kite is a little confusing. Right? So anyway, a kite. Okay, so a kite is different as an item taken by a kite is similar to a lost item swept away in the tide of the sea. So the Gemara raises another issue, but doesn't Rav say meat that was obscured from sight and unsupervised for a period of time is forbidden, as its source is unknown? How do you know that's kosher meat? And the Gemara answers, this is a case where the finder stands and sees the meat grabbed by the kite in the marketplace, flies away with it, drops it, and then he goes and picks up the meat. So he knows that it was taken from a kosher meat market, but because it was, taken away by this raptor, the owner despaired of ever recovering it, and that's why finders keepers. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Hanina found a slaughtered young goat between Tiberia and Sippori, and the sages permitted it to him, right? Slaughtered goat means not just a dead goat, which would be a nevela, right, the carcass of a goat. A slaughtered goat means that you can look at it and see that it was slaughtered in a kosher manner, right? So it's shechting, the way that it was killed makes it permitted to be eaten because it was a kosher slaughter. So Rabbi Ami said the sages permitted to him in terms of the laws of finding lost items in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And they permitted it to him in terms of the laws of slaughter of kosher animals in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Hanania, the son of Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, as it is taught in a Baraisa in a case where one's young goats and roosters were lost, and the owner went and found them slaughtered. Rabbi Yehuda deems the meat forbidden, and Rabbi Hanani, the son of Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, deems it permitted. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Rebbe says the statement of Rabbi Yehuda appears to be correct in a case where he found the slaughtered animals in a garbage dump, as the concern is that they were thrown away because the slaughter was unfit. And the statement of Rabbi Hanania, the son of Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, appears correct in a case where he found them in the house. And the Gemara infers from the fact that the sages permitted the meat to him in terms of the laws of slaughter, apparently this place is one where there is a majority of Jews, and conclude from that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar about finders keepers if something is dropped where the multitudes frequent, even in a place where there is a majority of Jews. Rava said it is a place where there is a majority of Gentiles, but the majority of the people who slaughter kosher animals are Jews. So the Gemara relates, Rabbi Ami found slaughtered fledglings from Tiveri and Sippori, and he came before Rabbi Asi to ask how to proceed. And some say he came before Rabbi Yochanan, and some say he came to the study hall. And they said to him, you can keep it. And Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha found a skein of thread from which a net was woven, and he came before Rabbi Yochanan to ask how to proceed. And some say he came to the study hall, and they said to him, you can keep it. Yeah, you can keep it. Okay, let's just take a few comments as the hour is very late. Bill, this reminds me of all things of an old Jeff Foxworthy routine I saw when I was a kid. His complaint was essentially that expensive sunglasses are lost inevitably, but no power short of direct intervention by God Almighty will rid you of cheap sunglasses. You could be on a cruise ship, he said, out in the middle of the ocean and drop them over the side, and suddenly a scuba diver would pop up and say, hey, anyone lose some cheapo sunglasses? Very good. Very good. But your expensive sunglasses, you'll drop them and lose them the first day you bought them, right? Before you even get them home. Very good. Ilanit, had my first kosher live in-person night reading and played my part in the Hebrew G. Note to self, practice this ahead. I hope that was fun and uplifting. Joseph, what happened if a Jew found an idol that belonged to a Gentile? Is he supposed to destroy it or return it? Especially that Gentile is a person of status, I'd say it might be a difficult situation. I don't think there's any obligation to destroy the idols of a Gentile. There certainly isn't. If it was in the land of Israel, in a time when Jews have sovereignty in the land of Israel, and you find an idol in the marketplace, are you meant to destroy it? I have no idea what the law is about that. A different question would be, what if you find an object that clearly belongs to a Gentile? Do you have an obligation to proclaim it in a situation where it's not of the multitudes, right? It's just the lost object of a Gentile. Do you have the same obligation to him as you have to a fellow Jew? I think the obligation is not the same. You have a greater obligation to proclaim and find and to find the owner of a lost object that belonged to a Jew. But it is not only praiseworthy to return the lost items of Gentiles, it is a Kiddush Hashem, right? So it's important that Jews are seen, publicly returning the objects of that Gentiles might have dropped anytime we have the possibility of doing so, for the benefit of peace between our peoples, etc. And moreover, if there's a general law about that in some other land, as we've learned many times, dina de malchusa dina, the law of the land is the land. But I don't know that there is a law of returning lost objects outside of Torah law. So it's more that you're doing it for the betterment of relations and peace, etc. Bill says, I suspect a prudent Jew would pretend they had not seen the thing and left it lying there. I think you're right, also in the sense that you don't want to touch it, right? An idol is something that you don't want to touch. Who knows who it belongs to, what powerful person it is. But also, you just don't even want to touch it because it is definitely a commandment to distance ourselves from idolatry in every way possible. That's what I've got for us tonight. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Sunday, during Purim. Special time for AT Daily, 2 p.m. Pacific. And we'll be on at noon Pacific to do our annual reading in English of the book of Esther.